Today we don't have any bills, but we've got a great presentation about a new technology called blockchain that we're all interested in learning about and hearing more about. And I understand it's a very fast-moving and exciting industry, and I'm excited about hearing it. I don't know much at all about it. Today, Representative Jason Powell has told me about this, and we're excited about learning a lot more about it. And I'm going to get Jason in a minute to head it up and introduce you all. But I wanted to ask you to maybe keep your presentation to about 5-6 minutes. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have questions for you all. So maybe we can all learn a lot more about it today. So Jason, would you mind taking over, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you allowing me to have this panel discussion today. And I know we had one a couple years ago on entrepreneurship, and I think some good ideas came from that. Blockchain is a very new and exciting technology, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. And so making sure that we keep Tennessee on the cutting edge of blockchain technology is important for our state. It's important for this General Assembly, and it's certainly important to the economy of the great state of Tennessee. So we've got some distinguished guests here today. Go over a brief bios of each, and then we'll let them begin their presentation. First, we have John Wagster. He's with Frost Brown Todd. He's also with the Tennessee Blockchain Alliance. He has unique experience helping U.S. companies forge cross-cultural contractual agreements around the world using industry best practices and contracts. He also focuses on technology-related commercial agreements while co-chairing the firm's blockchain and cryptocurrency practice at the firm's China desk. The Frost Brown Todd blockchain and cryptocurrency practice represents entities conducting internal coin offerings, distributed application providers, and industry service providers as they build legal framework for this new and disruptive technology. He's also, as I mentioned, the founder and executive director of the Tennessee Blockchain Alliance. Emily Vaughn. She directs the blockchain product development at Change Healthcare, a market-leading health IT company headquartered here in Nashville, Tennessee. Emily has been active member in marketing and business development for blockchain startups since 2013. Emily's perhaps best well-known for her contributions to blockchain and healthcare, spearheading the first global marketing campaign for healthcare at JIM, launching and co-chairing the Hyperledger Healthcare Working Group, and penning thought leadership pieces that serve as a conceptual basis for applying blockchain to healthcare. And finally, we have Giles Ward. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Hashed Health. He's responsible for the day-to-day running of the Nashville-based healthcare technology company that has set its sights on bringing blockchain and distributed ledger technology to healthcare. Before Hash, he spent 10 years operating and growing Dallas centers before the companies were acquired by DaVita and U.S. Renal, respectively. He lives in Nashville as an advocate for the technology environment, and as Tennessee is a place to do business. So thank you for being here today. As the chairman mentioned, and give each of you 5 or 6 minutes or so to talk a little bit, introduce us to the general concept of blockchain, give us a little blockchain 101, and then tell us about how it's helping the state of Tennessee and potential applications for its use. Thank you.
How's that? Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Powell, it's a pleasure to be here. We appreciate it. Again, I'm John Wagster. I'm with the law firm of Frost Brown Todd, also the executive director of the Tennessee Blockchain Alliance. We've only got a few minutes, so everything we do by definition is going to be an overview. It's tempting to talk about what we're all reading in the papers, Bitcoin and Ether and the meteoric rise and fall of those things, but that's missing the point. I want to spend just a second talking about cryptocurrencies, but really what we're here to talk about is blockchain technology. Blockchain is the technology behind these cryptocurrencies that are becoming so popular. So what is a cryptocurrency? Unlike traditional or fiat currencies, a digital currency or cryptocurrency is not controlled by any single government. It's not controlled by central authority. Rather, the management and control of the currency is spread across the network of users. That control is distributed. Cryptocurrencies can be purchased through online exchanges, and they're stored in numeric cryptographic keys that one maintains on your own digital wallet. An owner of a cryptocurrency can trust that when a token is sent to that user's wallet, the token is unique, it's real, and has value. Fiat currencies rely on the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, for example, or banks to say that they exist, or physical items like paper. Cryptocurrencies don't have that. think of it, really, they already exist in society in some ways. Think about airline points. You know, everybody has airline points. You have an account with each airline. It's how often that's really a form of cryptocurrency, if you think about it. You probably don't have a piece of paper. Maybe it has your number on it, and that's all it has. You give them that number, and they tell you how many points you have. And when you get more, your balance goes up, and when you use them, your balance goes down. That's a simple way of looking at cryptocurrency. But really, you don't have to understand the technology behind it to understand the effect that blockchain technology is having on business financing. Blockchain technology today is where the internet was in about 1993 or 94. And looking at the panel, you're situated kind of like I was at that time. We were about in the same age bracket. And we had, in 1993 or 94, you probably sent or received your first email. And you said, wow, that's pretty cool. And you thought, this is probably going to change the way business is done. It's certainly going to do away with the fax machine, if nothing else. But you didn't really know how dramatic those changes were going to be. You never would have guessed that the internet would become really the central mode of communication in the world, that it would displace everything from telephones to shopping malls, yet it has. Blockchain is the technology that powers that. So why is that important to Tennessee? Well, we're all here, the three of us, have spent a lot of time and effort because we see the potential of this blockchain or distributed ledger technology. There's a growing competition among states for blockchain business. 10 states so far, and that information is about 3 weeks old, so it might be 11 by now. 10 or 11 states have passed legislation or offered official state guidance that facilitates the use of blockchain technologies in their state, from the very simple legislation to broad legislation, and they're encouraging the development of blockchain industry within their state. And states are not just competing with other states, they're competing with other countries, because other countries that don't have the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodities Future Trading Commission and the Financial Enforcement Crimes Act, they can set up their own hierarchies that allow people to use blockchain a lot more simply than they can in the U.S. And initially, when we first started working with blockchain companies and people establishing new cryptocurrencies, they all wanted to set up overseas because they thought by doing so they could avoid the IRS, for example, or the scrutiny of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Well, now enough time has passed where they know that's not true. So companies want to set up in the United States, and we are asked at least once every couple of weeks, and as recently as this morning, okay, we're setting up, we're doing an initial coin offering, or I want to sell a distributed application using blockchain technology. Where should I establish my business? And I wish that I could say, you should establish it in Tennessee, because they have blockchain favorable legislation, they have laws, the legislature understands what's going on, and that's going to lead to establishment of case law and a blockchain friendly environment. But right now we can't. Right now we say probably Delaware is your best bet, not because they're historically the place to set up corporations, but because they have actively passed legislation that encourages the use of blockchain technology, that has authorized the use of smart contracts and other things. State of Nevada has done a similar thing. State of Illinois. Those are the top three where people go today. A lot of foreign countries will allow the setup of these blockchain technologies without taxation. And that's not going to happen here, but that's really being outweighed now by the ease of doing business in the United States. So people want to come here. Tennessee and Nashville in particular are natural hubs for the blockchain industry. We have a huge healthcare presence, as you'll hear in a few minutes, healthcare technology, many colleges and universities. We have a very educated workplace. We have people in the coding and technology communities that are interested in this space, and those numbers are growing exponentially. My law firm, Frost Brown Todd, and Hashed Health, Giles Company, and another company called BTC Media started early last year a meetup. And a meetup is sort of a millennial group that gets together. It's organized by the internet, and they're topic-specific meetings. We started one on the blockchain industry early last year, and we had 3 members that started it. And today we have over 500 members. In less than a year, we've gone from 3 to 500. Now, not all 500 come to every meeting, but we have hundreds at every meeting. And they're here because it's a fascinating technology, and it bodes well for Tennessee. So we're really ripe for the development of this technology. My own law firm has grown from 2 blockchain clients at the end of 2016 to over 60 today. And all those clients, it stands to reason that they should come here because they all have banking relationships. They all make deposits of the purchasers of their tokens that they make. They all require software developers, many of whom now are currently outsourced, but we need a cadre of development here in Nashville or in Tennessee. They could serve them. They're going to need insurance providers. They're going to need service providers like lawyers and accountants, and they're going to need consultants. And all those things, Nashville has a good head start on most states to lay the groundwork for this technology. And we hope that you guys will continue to support us in our endeavors to make it the place to be. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. Turn this on. Okay, hi. So I'm Emily Vaughn. I am the blockchain product director at Change Healthcare. And thank you for your comments, Sean. I think that I agree with everything that you've said. So I want to give you guys some idea about Change Healthcare. I don't know how familiar you are with this company, but we're based here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are a large health IT company that employs about 16,000 people worldwide. And we are one of the largest healthcare networks in the country. We process $2 trillion in healthcare insurance claims every year, and we connect the widest network of payers, providers, and patients to our data infrastructure. So when you think about what Change Healthcare does, we provide a network infrastructure for processing healthcare transactions. We also have software that sits on top of that network infrastructure that we sell. And then we have services, consulting, analytics, and other types of services that sit on top of that. So when you think about blockchain technology and why a company like Change would approach it, blockchain technology is a network infrastructure technology. It sits at the lowest level of a network. And as a current network infrastructure provider, it's incumbent upon us to develop that and integrate it with our products. So we have been actively looking at ways to integrate blockchain technology with what we do, and to understand its impact to our customers. And we have released a blockchain solution into production based on the development that we did last year. So, and I can give you guys some more information about that. But first, I think it's important to talk about why. Why does a company like Change Healthcare see value in this technology? The way that we see it, the internet really provided a lot of momentum to the way that we exchange information. And but when the internet was invented, it didn't really have like a chronology or a trust mechanism in it, which is why you have so much information on the internet that's bogus. So how do we trust the information that we're receiving through networks like the internet? How do we trust the emails that we're getting? We really don't know, and we don't trust this information. And so blockchain technology as a utility was invented to provide a basis of chronology, a timekeeping mechanism that multiple systems that don't communicate with each other could agree on, so that we could say these events happened in this order. And that's a really powerful mechanism because it allows companies who are competitive or who don't directly do business together to agree on something outside of their business that they can coordinate through. And at a technical level, the types of benefits that we think we can unlock are speed in transactions. We think we'll be able to process healthcare transactions a lot faster and with greater integrity. We think we'll be able to engage patients and doctors more directly through this technology while still being able to protect their privacy and their agency within a network like this. Previous approaches to solving interoperability and interconnectivity challenges in industries like healthcare, supply chain manufacturing, and insurance have really centered around bringing all of the data to one source and then pushing it back out to everyone else. But as the data that we are collecting and processing is growing exponentially over the last few years and into the future, that method for collecting and distributing data is not sustainable. So we need new network technologies that will allow us to provide personalized services to patients, providers, and improve the healthcare experience while reducing costs. So that's what's motivating our interest. And I think that it's important to know that blockchain technology, the success of blockchain technology, is about getting a network effect behind it. You have to have users. You have to have companies that are using this network. Otherwise, the network doesn't really have a lot of value. So when Change Healthcare looks at what Tennessee could be doing to encourage blockchain development, we think about the ways that our innovation can be protected, and the new methods that we're trying to introduce can be free to be incubated here and experimented with. But we also think about measures that do encourage businesses to come here, because the solutions that we're developing are collaborative in nature, and we will need more entrepreneurs and innovators to use our tools and grow the potential for this technology. So when you guys are considering the ways in which Tennessee could benefit from this tech, there are opportunities to bring new business here, and then there's opportunities to grow our existing businesses here and to empower the large companies that make up the economy of the state to move into the future and to embrace a new network infrastructure that might change the way we design applications.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Jason, Representative Powell, thank you for inviting us. I think the timeliness of this hearing is remarkable. Like, we see this technology today, it's a global technology, and there is a lot going on in Tennessee that is quietly shaping how the world sees this. Hashed Health is a small company. We just brought on our 11th employee, but today, as I sit here, and actually the reason I sit here is because our CEO is in Tel Aviv. Another one of our guys is speaking in New York, and our CEO will finish his speech in Tel Aviv, take a red eye to San Francisco, and he's on a panel there tomorrow morning. This is a global movement, and the quiet noise that is happening in Nashville that we're aware of, but we have good contacts and friends in Memphis that are doing it too. It's remarkable. I'll look at our team of 10, our last 3 hires. We met through blockchain events. They all lived in New York City. They all got in their cars and drove to Nashville. So when we look at the sort of tech debt that we have in this town, like, we can either build it or we can import it. And like our lead developer is local. The 2 guys that followed him literally got in their cars on a Thursday and started work on a Monday after asking how long it took to drive from New York to Nashville. A year and a half ago, BTC Media and Hashed Health hosted a conference called Distributed Health. It was the first and the largest, it remains the largest healthcare blockchain conference in the world. As the first one was going on, the complaint we heard from participants was it's awfully hard to fly across the world for a one-day conference. Could you make it 2 days? So that first conference was about 500 people. 2/3 of them had never been to Nashville before and had traveled in just for this conference. This last year, there were about 900 participants. It was a 2-day conference, and again, the attendees were from more than 20 countries, and they were coming to Nashville because the conversation around this technology is happening here. As we look, like, statewide, we obviously have a very favorable tax environment here. I was on the phone last night with a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He's had 2 successful technology exits, and he's a part of a very big blockchain startup, and he is moving his family to Nashville. He's on the fence as to whether he moves the company, which is now co-headquartered in Oakland and Johannesburg, South Africa, but he's in the current environment. Blockchain assets are taxed as property. And with the sort of the recent federal tax legislation and the sort of uncertainty around how those assets will be taxed in the future, he said, I'm going to move my family's tax basis to a business-friendly, tax-friendly location. And once we get certainty around how the blockchain assets are dealt with, we'll talk about the company. But those conversations are happening around the country, and obviously Nashville has, like, we've got the It City buzz right now, and people are looking at us as a as a place to call home. Our last two big client meetings, or the two big client meetings we've scheduled in the last week, were with Fortune 500 companies, and our 10-person team sort of set up and thought about, okay, we'll be traveling, we're budgeting out the flights and the hotels, and they said, oh, no, like, let's get away, let's come to Nashville. We've been looking for a reason to come down to Tennessee. So the draw is here. As we look at this conference, the Distributed Health Conference, the first one was 500, the second one was 900. The third conference is already on the books. This is going to continue to grow, and as we continue as a business community to support this, there's no reason that the sort of fourth and fifth annual conferences aren't here too. But the speed with which this technology is moving globally, it could very well be, the fifth annual could be in Dubai or Shanghai, but we are fighting and actively seeking to sort of keep that sort of thing local. I'll just circle back just to a little bit, like I think Bitcoin's lasting legacy will be this data structure blockchain. It is just a data structure in the end. It's a shared ledger. It's secure. It sits between participants in a value chain. So it's not my record. It's not your record. It's the record that sits between us. So there's no reconciliation. If you think about the sort of power of a payer and a provider in the healthcare system looking at the same record of a healthcare transaction, I think about all the reconciliation that happens between you visiting a doctor and you getting that EOB and you paying the bill and the insurance settling, like how many pieces of mail and how much time passes. If the two participants or the three participants, if you include the patient, are looking at the same copy of that ledger, just think about the efficiencies that are gained there. I think as we look at this technology, as John said, we are early days. If you had tried to describe, if you think about where we are now, we are early to mid-90s in relation to the internet. And this technology is moving very fast, and as it moves, it's maturing, and people are starting to see new ideas. And like the cool things that are going to come out of this technology are probably 10 years away from someone thinking about. But the momentum is here. The way these data structures and technologies are developing and maturing, and the developers and the talent focused on moving them it's around us every day. I'll finish with, like, when the internet was created, like, protocols around email, around web addresses were well defined. The way that data was validated and the authenticity of what you saw online, to Emily's point, was never addressed. And so we've effectively outsourced the sort of ownership and the validity of that data to Facebook and to Google and to private entities. I think as blockchain starts to sort of propagate through these systems, and as companies start to adopt it, it's going to reclaim the ownership and the authenticity of that data, and we're going to start the way we combat sort of fake news and identity sort of threats online they're going to be a story of the past. So thank you for the floor.
Thank you all very much. So basically, it is not an ownership. It is a technology or an idea, and around storage and transfer of information. But the way I went online and read it, it started off as information you put in blocks that are tied together in chains. And so when you come together, what actually do you talk about? Do you talk about how to make the blocks more secure, or how to tie them together, or what is the big draw to it? I guess, John?
What we generally talk about is the revolutionary changes this new technology is going to have on the business world. And if you think about the evolution of the technology, back in the early 90s, we all had PCs. You had your own personal computer, and if you worked in an office, it was connected to the other computers in your office, and that was called a LAN, or a local area network. And if you had a big office, or you had offices in multiple states, it'd be a WAN, a WAN, a wide area network. But then we went to sort of remote storage, where the computing capacity that was required to run all these PCs on a network was so big that it made sense, instead of running it and having a bunch of servers in your office, you would pay somebody to run it in servers that they hosted somewhere else. And then we went to cloud-based computing, where not only were those servers where it was hosted located somewhere else, they're spread all over the world, or can be. And the information on those servers is now stored, through algorithms in different servers. So it's spread all over the place. Blockchain technology is the next step, because the blockchain network itself is distributed. And all that, the computing power that it takes to run those networks isn't in one place. It's spread all over the world, and spread to anybody wherever those blockchain nodes happen to be. And once, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, once information is included in a block and that block is hashed, it's there, it's immutable, it can't be changed, and it's time-stamped. So anybody can go back and look at it, and it creates a perfect record. And that technology itself can disintermediate a lot of the business practices and a lot of the functions that are going on in our society. They're starting now, but it's going to be a period of years, as Giles said, while that disintermediation takes place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sitting up here, we've heard how great this new technology is, and I'll be quite honest with you. I understood about half of what you folks said. So, I know what analytics are. I know what algorithms are. I understand technology, okay? But how does all of this equate? And I don't understand the whole Bitcoin process either. But how does this equate to a monetary value? Can you give me your most simplistic response, please?
So I'll separate the value and the currency from the data structure that supports it. I think we're looking at this as a distributed, secure database. In the Bitcoin world, the data assets that are moving around in that environment are digital units of value called Bitcoins. In our world, that they are transactions. And back to the chairman's question, in conjunction with this, when we sit down and talk about this, and one of these groups, we've got one tonight where Emily and Change are going to present, like 200 people are showing up, and we're live streaming it on the internet because of the audience. It's not, people are starting to grasp the technology, but as they start to understand the technology, we can start talking about what the technology does. I use, like, Uber and Lyft are not cool because of the internet, but try doing it without them. Like, we're in a point in this technology where people are starting to see the early applications. We're starting to do, like, the early, like, check the weather across the globe, get the sports score from last night. I think that's where, in the maturity level where we are. I
apologize, Mr. Chairman, I apologize to you for interrupting you, but if I don't ask, I'm afraid I'll forget. But what is the need for this? What's the need for it?
So, yeah, I'll take a stab at this one. Thank you. So, the need for blockchain technology and where it came from, you have to consider the conditions of the world in which it was invented. Blockchain technology was released to the world in 2009, right after the 2008 bank bailout. And so this tech was invented to basically say, if the trusted parties have all of the information and you don't have it, then you're going to be left holding the bag. And so blockchain technology is an attempt to democratize information so that as an individual stakeholder, I can protect myself, even if my counterparty is over-leveraged. So the applications that use that ledger don't always have to have a cryptocurrency. They don't have to have a token. So in the context of healthcare, how could you use a shared accounting framework between multiple companies to solve a problem or create value? So in the example of healthcare, you have an asset that goes in between all these companies. It's a patient. The patient is an asset to payers and providers who make their businesses off of serving the patient. But how that patient is represented at one hospital, how that patient is represented at an insurance company, and how they're represented in their Fitbit application is completely different. So blockchain technology as a shared accounting infrastructure allows us to identify the patient and establish continuity of their interactions between systems that don't communicate with each other, but communicate with the blockchain. So there are a number of applications you can build on top of a dynamic like that to incentivize these companies to participate. And that's where cryptocurrency usually comes in as a payment mechanism that can incentivize sharing information on this network. I hope that helps.
Not really, but I appreciate your response.
Thanks.
All right,
Let me
next
give you
we
one
have
more try,
Chairman Holt.
Representative Gravitt.
Chairman Holtzclaw, I believe, is next.
I like, if I could give Representative Gravitt one more try on a 30-second example. If you're familiar with international finance transactions, they often require a letter of credit, an escrow agreement, an account broker. Using blockchain technology and the contracts, the smart contracts, so-called, associated with it, instead of, you could replace with a software application, a blockchain-based software application, you could negate the need for a letter of credit or an escrow agreement or a broker just by the parties agreeing ahead of time on how your goods are sent from location A to location B. So if it's meat at location A, it has to be sent on this date, it has to be frozen, it has to remain frozen the whole time, it has to get out, it has to be delivered to my warehouse and put in a freezer over here. And if all those things are met, and the parties ahead of time agree that those are the criteria, you can lock that into a piece of software. And as soon as that meat arrives to a digital standard, the money is sent, money's released. It's here on time, the money's automatically released, and your contract is done. You've removed 3 middlemen that are no longer necessary because this technology can replace them.
Chairman Holtzclaw.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Basically, what I understand, some people are confusing it with Bitcoin and that kind of stuff, but this is like an open architect, like a Unix system or something like that, where everybody has access to this information quickly. If you want to compare it to like a surgery, maybe in a hospital, you can access 1,000 different ways to do it versus the way I do it and make it very beneficial. My question would be, do you buy into this just like you would a software system as far as per users? And then the other issue I see that kind of would want to be answered is the trust issue, getting like different hospital organizations to sign up to release their information. Mm-hmm. Can you respond to any of that?
Sure. So I'll respond to that. The first question about coordination around, like, a surgery, for example, is yes. You can think of it as a way where if I have a method, I can publish it onto this network, and anyone else who's connected to the network can see that and consume it. So it is a way to do a one-to-many sort of broadcast, and it's important to know that every transaction that is recorded onto the blockchain network is visible to the other counterparties on the network. So there's a great deal of application layering that goes on top of the blockchain network so that the data and the identity of the users can be protected. And that's actually a good business opportunity for companies like Change Healthcare. So you're saying, how do you interact with a blockchain network? You would interact with it the same way you would interact with your mobile app. It's an app. There's an app on your phone. It uses a blockchain on the back end. And so the business models around how to engage with the technology depend on what application you're using. So if you're a business that wants to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, there is a service that you can integrate with your online website, and it can enable you to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. And that's one way to interact, and it charges you a transaction fee. Another way to interact would be if you want to build a blockchain application in your business to perform a certain function, you might want to hire a blockchain technology vendor to come over and help support some of the application staging that you want to do. So the short answer is that there are many layers to a blockchain solution, and the business proposition for getting value out of those layers just depends on your role. So for a company like Change Healthcare, we anticipate being able to monetize applications that are existing. Like we have existing revenue cycle management technology. If we can use blockchain technology to make it go faster, then that's a better product that we can sell, and we would sell it the same way that we typically do. So, but it does open up new business models that are a little bit different. And I think your second question was around trust. Is how do you get people to trust when this network is replacing a third party? That's also a design consideration. It depends on how you design your application. And this kind of goes back to your question, Chairman. The types of things that we have to think about as technologists, because your questions are, it depends, right? Like it depends on how you design it. So the types of questions we have to think about are, how are we protecting the identity of the users on the network? How are we making sure that this network can't be used to identify someone against their will and steal their information or target them? We have to think about the security of the services that we're designing, because blockchain is an automatic execution environment. So once I design a program and it's an automatic contract, it's going to execute itself. So we have to think about, once I hit go, is this perfectly designed? Is there a hole in this that someone could exploit? So there are technical considerations that we have to think about that have impact on individual users, and that takes up a lot of my time personally, because that's the area that we're really focused on.
Representative Tillis.
Thank you, Chairman March. When I saw this placed on the calendar last week, I said, what is blockchain technology? And I've been reading up a lot on it. And of course, cryptocurrency, I've been hearing about this, especially in the past 3 months when it went up to about $19,000 per Bitcoin in value. I'm trying to separate the Bitcoin from the file sharing application of blockchain technology, because from what I read, I'm dating myself here, when I saw peer-to-peer file sharing, I thought of Napster. I was like, all right, back then, all these people were here and they would, share these files. But now it gets to, we're talking about storage of information with blockchain technology. So and it's decentralized, instead of it being, for like the state of Tennessee, we have a central file storage here. So with decentralized file storage, and there's nodes around the world, computers that are keeping up with blockchain, or when new blocks are created, that's information's being stored in a decentralized manner. Okay, so if you could just, how do we separate when Bitcoin was first created, 10 years ago by Satoshi Nakamoto, and he created this technology to control, I guess, the Bitcoin or manage it. Well, it's either a person or a group. It's never been determined. But Bitcoin technology, or Bitcoin, is one thing. We're talking about cryptocurrency. But are we talking about just for the purpose of file sharing, storage, and safely stored data?
If you think about that Bitcoin as a unit of value, or as a digital, it's a digital thing with a physical value. If you think about that data point and separate it from the value that it has as a currency, any data point can be stored on a blockchain. I'll give a quick example. We've been working with the state of Illinois. We've moved their physician licensure process to the blockchain. In the past, when someone picked up the phone and called medical school and said, did Dr. Smith attend your medical school? They signed in a box and said yes. And then at the next point in that, after the license was granted, the next step, someone picked up the phone, called the medical school back and said, did Dr. Smith attend your medical school? But at every point in the chain, someone was having to pick up the phone and ask the same question because there was no way to transfer the answer to that question securely along a chain. So by the system we've built with Illinois, when that verification is done, it creates a digital certificate or a token that can now be moved through a value chain. So a hospital or another state can say, by the mere existence of that token, I can trust that that physician attended the medical school. So a unit of, it doesn't have to be a unit of value. It can be a data point.
I have many questions and not time to cover them here, and I would love to sit down with you and talk more about this. But just one thing quick, in your part of the presentation, John, you talked about government, I guess setting some parameters within the state, and as some other states have. And as y'all have discussed, this is a ever evolving technology. How should or why should the government, get involved with this when you talk about creation of business within the state?
So I would like to divorce the conversation about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin from the technology that is blockchain, but it's hard to answer your question while doing that. So most of the regulation, cryptocurrencies are investments. It's like a different asset class. And whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, whether they have value or not, people are investing a lot of money in them right now. And last year, there was more money invested in cryptocurrency through initial coin offerings than was invested through private equity and venture capital in the United States combined. And the most popular financial website in the world is called coinmarketcap.com, and it shows the value of all the tokens, the cryptocurrencies as they exist. It gets more hits every day than the Wall Street Journal website. So it's out there, and people are investing, and they're looking at these coins as a different type of asset class, whether we like it or not. So because so many people are investing in them, there's many argue, and I agree with them, that there's a logical role for governments to play in the regulation of them. The Securities and Exchange Commission regulates securities. Many coins are arguably not securities. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission regulates commodities. Well, many coins are not commodities. But there are a lot of coins that fall in there in this netherworld. We're not sure what they are yet because it's new. And people investing in them might, would be wise. Buyer beware. It's absolutely, it should be buyer beware. But at some point, there's a role for governments, in my opinion, to step in and say, yes, buyer beware, but we want to make sure that there's at least a minimum standard that these cryptocurrencies abide by before we allow U.S. citizens to.
And one more thing real quick. With all the different types of cryptocurrencies, there's several out there now. I can't remember the number. Can you monetize one of those? Right now, can that Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency be converted into
Yes.
dollars
Instantly.
around the world?
Instantly.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world.
Chairman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I was going to try to get it down to a level where it's sort of practical on a local government level, and get sort of push aside the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency thing and give you a couple of examples and see if I'm on the right track here. It seems to me that on a practical level, we could make government record keeping almost the criminals couldn't get in and mess it up, I guess is what I'm saying. If you're the Register of Deeds, for instance, and you've got the deed recorded, no longer would a clerk be able to go in and get rid of one of the restrictions on a piece of property you're about to buy if you had someone willing to do that illegally and they couldn't be caught. It would almost be impossible to do something like that. If you're the assessor of property, one of your employees could not go in and find their buddy's house and go slip a file out and put a new value on it so that they saved on property taxes. If it were in this form, it would take a massive conspiracy to do things like that. Am I on the right track as far as a practical?
100%. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I almost understand it, and I've decided that the the internet is not a fad. They've convinced me.
How do you keep people from changing it? What's the process to keep people from stealing it and manipulating it and putting it back in there?
Yeah, so when you add information to a blockchain network, what happens is that that piece of data, say it's a file that is, your driver's license. So we're going to scan your driver's license and give it a unique identifier on the blockchain. This is called a hash function. It's a cryptographic process that takes the content, the unique content of your document, plus the timestamp, your ISP, your IP address, and the information off of your computer, and it takes all of that data and it creates a unique identifier. And so when you publish that to the blockchain, you can use that identifier to prove that the underlying document that's referencing it hasn't been altered or changed in any way. And so that's one way to keep track of assets on a blockchain. But the important part is once those transactions are recorded to the blockchain, they are cryptographically secure. So each transaction that comes after it is baked into the transaction before it. So if I wanted to go back in time and change a transaction on the blockchain, I would have to go back, change the transaction, and then reproduce every single hash function in the chain that came after it. And I would have to convince every other node on the blockchain network to agree with what I was doing. And it's impossible. It's feasibly impossible to do because of the hash power required to change the whole network. And efforts to do that will fork the network, and they'll send it in two separate directions, where the original one, the network servers will continue to use the original network, having rejected the attempt to manipulate it. And there may be new servers that take the new network, and it forks.
Was this going to help with identity theft and those type problems we hear all the time?